Right now, in certain parts of this country, moving trucks are so backlogged that companies are charging families double, sometimes triple, just to leave. U-Haul actually tracks this. When one-way truck rentals out of a city or state cost dramatically more than rentals going in, that's not a pricing glitch. That's a migration signal, and over the last 3 years, those signals have gotten loud. We're not talking about a handful of restless 20-somethings chasing better weather. We're talking about families. Parents with school-age kids, people with careers and mortgages and deep roots, making the gut-wrenching decision to uproot everything because staying has become the bigger risk. I spent weeks buried in census migration data, FBI uniform crime reports, FEMA disaster frequency maps, insurance industry withdrawal filings, and education performance rankings. And when you layer all of that together, 10 states rise to the surface, not because of politics, not because of culture wars, but because of measurable, documented conditions that are making daily family life harder, more dangerous, or more expensive than it needs to be. Some of these will confirm what you already suspect. A few of them are going to genuinely surprise you. And one of them, I'll get to it, is a state that still markets itself as a paradise for families, which makes the data even more unsettling. Before I get into specifics, I want to be clear about something. Every state on this list has good people, great communities, and neighborhoods where families thrive. I'm not telling you to panic, and I'm not telling anyone their home is worthless. What I am doing is showing you what the exposed data reveals when you strip away tourism boards and political spin. Families deserve to make decisions based on reality, not brochures. That's all this is. Illinois. And specifically, the Chicago metro area is driving this, but the state-level numbers are staggering on their own. Illinois has lost population every single year for nearly a decade straight. Between 2020 and 2024, the net outflow crossed 300,000 residents. The property tax burden in Illinois is among the highest in the nation. Families in some counties are paying $8,000 to $12,000 a year on modest homes. The state's pension crisis has created a fiscal environment where taxes keep climbing and services keep declining. And then there's crime. Chicago's violent crime numbers dominate headlines, but smaller cities like Rockford and East St. Louis carry per capita rates that are just as alarming. Young families I've spoken with describe a tipping point moment. The tax bill comes, the car gets broken into again, the school announces budget cuts again, and suddenly the idea of leaving stops being hypothetical. Louisiana. This one breaks my heart because the culture, the food, the people, there's nowhere else like it. But the numbers are brutal. Louisiana consistently ranks in the bottom 5 states for healthcare access, education outcomes, and infrastructure quality. The violent crime rate hovers around 40 to 50% above the national average depending on the year. And here's what's accelerating the exodus: insurance. After repeated hurricane seasons, major insurance carriers have either pulled out of the state entirely or raised premiums so high that home ownership becomes financially irrational. Families in coastal parishes are watching their insurance triple in 3 years, while their home values flatline or drop. When the cost of protecting your home exceeds what the home is appreciating, the math breaks. People aren't leaving Louisiana because they want to. They're leaving because the spreadsheet says they have to. California. And I know, you probably expected this one first, but I placed it here intentionally because the California story is more nuanced than most people present it. Yes, the cost of living is absurd. Median home prices in many family-friendly suburbs have crossed $800,000. Yes, the tax burden is heavy. But what's actually pushing families out isn't just expense. It's the gap between what you pay and what you get. Families are paying premium prices and dealing with overcrowded schools, worsening traffic, infrastructure, a homelessness crisis that's moved into suburban neighborhoods, and in some areas, a visible deterioration of public spaces. The California dream still exists, but it's been priced and pressured into a bracket that excludes the average working family. And the outmigration data confirms it. California lost over 800,000 residents in net domestic migration between 2020 and 2023 alone. That's not a blip. That's a trend with momentum. Mississippi. This is the state where education data alone tells the story. Mississippi has ranked at or near the bottom of national education performance metrics for decades. And while there have been bright spots, the state's early literacy program has shown real gains, the broader picture remains difficult. Healthcare access in rural Mississippi is in crisis, with hospital closures leaving some families an hour or more from emergency care. The poverty rate is the highest in the nation. And for families evaluating where to raise children, the combination of limited economic opportunity, underfunded schools, and sparse healthcare infrastructure creates a compounding problem where each issue makes the others worse. Families who leave often describe it not as a choice, but as something they felt they owed their kids. Oregon. This one surprises people because Oregon's reputation, the nature, the progressive culture, the livability brand, feels at odds with an exodus. But the Portland metro area has experienced a dramatic shift in the last 5 years. Property crime rates skyrocketed. The downtown core saw significant business closures. The drug crisis, compounded by policy decisions around decriminalization that have since been partially reversed, created street-level conditions that families in certain neighborhoods describe as unlivable. Outside Portland, rural Oregon faces its own pressures. Wildfire seasons that are growing longer and more destructive, limited job markets, and rising costs without corresponding wage growth. The state still has extraordinary beauty and genuine community, but families with young children are increasingly calculating that the trajectory isn't moving in their direction. Missouri. Specifically, the St. Louis metro area carries violent crime statistics that consistently place it among the most dangerous metro areas in the country. But beyond the headline crime numbers, Missouri families point to broader systemic issues. An aging infrastructure that the American Society of Civil Engineers has flagged repeatedly, underfunded public schools in key districts, and a healthcare system that's particularly strained in rural areas following multiple hospital closures. The cost of living is lower than many states on this list, and that's kept some families in place. But the emerging pattern is clear. Families with the financial ability to relocate are doing so, and the ones staying are disproportionately those who feel trapped by economics. That dynamic accelerates decline, and local leaders know it. New Mexico. Here's a state with stunning landscapes and a rich cultural identity that is simultaneously experiencing some of the most alarming family safety statistics in the country. New Mexico's violent crime rate consistently ranks in the top 5 nationally. Property crime is equally elevated. The child poverty rate is among the highest in the nation, nearly 1 in 4 children. And the education system, by most national metrics, performs in the bottom 10. For families evaluating their options, New Mexico presents a painful equation. Affordable housing and natural beauty on one side, personal safety concerns, and limited educational resources on the other. Alaska. This is the one that rarely makes these lists, and it should. Alaska's unique geography creates challenges that most Americans never consider until they live there. The cost of goods, groceries, building materials, medical supplies, is dramatically higher due to shipping logistics. Healthcare access in remote areas is genuinely precarious, with some communities relying entirely on air transport for medical emergencies. Domestic violence and substance abuse rates are among the highest in the nation, driven in part by isolation, extreme seasonal darkness, and economic stress. And the winters? This isn't a lifestyle inconvenience, it's a safety factor. Families with young children face real logistical danger during months of extreme cold and limited daylight. The state's population has been declining slowly but steadily, and the families, leaving consistently cite the same theme. The romance of frontier living collides with the reality of raising children in extreme conditions. Maryland. Now this one is going to raise some eyebrows because Maryland is affluent, well-educated, and positioned near the nation's capital. But dig into the data, and a different picture emerges. The Baltimore metro area carries violent crime rates that rival any city in the country. The property tax and income tax combination in Maryland is among the most aggressive on the East Coast, and traffic congestion in the D.C. corridor has reached a point where families in suburbs like Columbia, Germantown, or Bowie are spending 2 to 3 hours daily in commutes that devour family time and mental health. Maryland families aren't fleeing danger in the dramatic sense. They're fleeing a slow erosion of quality of life, where high costs, long commutes, and safety concerns in key areas combine into a weight that eventually tips the scale. Northern Virginia, the Carolinas, and parts of Pennsylvania are absorbing Maryland families at an accelerating rate. And the final state, the one I held for last because it represents the most complicated version of this problem, is Texas. Yes, Texas. The state that has been the #1 destination for families relocating from California, Illinois, and New York is simultaneously experiencing its own outflow. And the reason is fascinating. Texas marketed itself on no income tax, affordable housing, and economic opportunity. And for early arrivals, that was real. But the rapid population influx has created secondary problems. Property taxes are among the highest in the country, effectively replacing the income tax that was never there. Home insurance costs have exploded due to increasing severe weather events, hailstorms, flooding, the 2021 grid collapse that left families without heat in deadly cold. Property values in cities like Austin and Dallas surged so fast that affordability, the original selling point, has evaporated for many. And the power grid reliability question hasn't been fully resolved, which sits in the back of every Texas family's mind during each summer and winter. Texas is still growing, to be clear, but the families leaving are a new and growing category, and their reasons mirror the exact concerns that brought the earlier wave of arrivals in the first place: cost, safety, and infrastructure trust. So what did the families who left early figure out that everyone else is still wrestling with? They figured out that the decision to move isn't really about finding a perfect state. No state is perfect. It's about identifying which risks you're willing to tolerate and which ones are non-negotiable for your family. Crime statistics, natural disaster exposure, education quality, healthcare access, tax burden, infrastructure reliability. These aren't political talking points. They're quality of life metrics, and they're measurable. The hard truth is that most families delay this decision far too long because moving is emotional. Your home is where your memories live. Your kids' friends are there. Your church, your neighborhood, your routines. I understand that deeply. But the families who moved strategically, who evaluated the data, planned their finances, and relocated proactively rather than reactively, consistently report the same thing 6 months later. They say they wish they'd done it sooner. Not because their old state was terrible, but because they didn't realize how much weight they'd been carrying until they put it down. If this gave you a framework for thinking about your own situation, or if it confirmed something you've been feeling but couldn't articulate, drop a comment and tell me where you are and what you're seeing on the ground. Honestly, the local perspective is something no dataset can fully capture, and this community is incredible at filling in those gaps. Share this with a family member or friend who's been on the fence about a move. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can do is just open the conversation. And if you're not subscribed, come on in. Next week, I'm releasing the flip side of this, the 10 states where families are flooding in, and why the data says they might be right. You're going to want to see that list.